Welcome to Jammin' with Jason Mefford, a show where we discuss topics relevant to chief audit executives and professionals in audit, risk, and compliance. We discuss the technical and soft skills needed to navigate the minefields of organizations. You hear best practices and practical advice for helping you advance your career, and we'll even talk about music, mindfulness, and psychology, because we can. So sit back and relax while you listen to the #1 podcast in the world for internal auditors, unscripted and unedited. Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, I'm back with you. I can talk today. I promise I can talk. I'm back to you today, and we're going to talk a little bit about conversations. And the reason for that is, again, I've been helping people for quite a few years, many years actually, and I'm seeing a lot of trends of things that most people I talk to are actually struggling with, and I wanted to talk about one of those today. And so we're going to get in. I'm going to talk about a couple things. In fact, I'm going to share with you a personal story. I'm going to get a little personal with you and actually share a story with you that actually I didn't share with anybody for about 10 years. And in fact, I've only shared it a couple of times since then. And we're going to get into that here a little bit later in the episode. But I wanted to start off and just kind of ask you a couple questions and start our conversation going. And like I said, like I do in a lot of the podcasts, we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit. But I want to ask you, have you had a conversation this last month that just didn't go the way you expected? Now, if you're like most people, I'm sure you have. I mean, I've had plenty of these, right? Where, again, and I realize, I know that you're a good communicator, because you wouldn't be where you are if you weren't a good communicator. But sometimes, no matter how much we seem to prepare in advance, we go into some conversations and all of a sudden they just take a turn that we weren't anticipating. And it's like the conversation starts running away from us. And we're out there trying to grab it, trying to pull it back in. But it seems like no matter what we do, the conversation just goes away that we were not anticipating and that we didn't want it to go. Now, this might have been, a conversation at work. It might have been in your personal life, with your partner or maybe with one of your kids or a family member. And especially now, as we're coming into the holiday season, I'm guessing that there's probably also some conversations, maybe with family, friends, or even maybe a staff member that you have to deliver a difficult message to about their performance that you're not really looking forward to. You're trying to prepare, but you're a little anxious about that. And so I want to get in today and talk a little bit more about that. How can you actually control any conversation and help to be able to lead it to where you want to go? Okay, so that's really kind of what we're going to be talking about today. But before we jump into that, I wanted to talk briefly about the movie The Karate Kid. So, if you're familiar with that movie from the 80s, I mean, man, it's a great movie. I love that movie. And, in there, here's kind of the backstory. So if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, but I'm kind of giving away part of the movie to you. But, there's this young kid named Daniel, and Daniel moves into a new area and he goes to school. And, sure enough, if you've ever moved schools like I did, when you first show up and you're the new kid in school, either people kind of take to you and, you just get in with the right crowd and everything is fine. Or what ends up happening often is sometimes that new kid doesn't really have any friends. And sometimes people will beat them up or bully them. And it sucks to be that kid. I've been that kid before. Okay. And it's not fun. So anyway, in the Karate Kid movie, right, Daniel shows up, he goes to this new school, and of course, there's a group of kids that are trying to beat him up and bully him. And these kids know karate. And so he gets roughed up a little bit. And Mr. Miyagi, who I think he's the handyman kind of in the apartment complex where they are living, Daniel sees that Mr. Miyagi knows how to do karate because he watches him kind of do some of the stuff. And so, Daniel doesn't want to get beat up and bullied anymore. And so he approaches Mr. Miyagi and asks him to teach him how to do karate, right? Because he doesn't want to get beat up and bullied anymore. He wants to know how to be able to protect himself, how, if these kids come at him again, that he can actually defend himself and protect himself and not get beat up and bullied anymore. So he has the courage, and it does take courage to ask for help. Okay. Because I know a lot of times we think we have everything together. We know how to do it. We just have to work harder. But sometimes we do just have to reach out for help. And so Daniel felt like he was in that position. So he asked Mr. Miyagi, and Mr. Miyagi says, "Come to my house, at this time or whatever." And he comes over and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna teach you karate." Now, first thing before we get started with that, he gives Daniel a whole bunch of different tasks that he has to do. And so there were some different ones, like he made him wash his cars. So he made Daniel wash the cars, and then he had to put wax on the car, right? And if you've ever washed a car, I know we don't do that too much anymore. We usually kind of go through the drive-through thing, but I remember the old days of actually washing the car, applying the wax, letting it sit for a while, and then rubbing it off. Okay. And so Mr. Miyagi taught him this particular way of, this is how you wax on, this is how you wax off. And so he had Daniel washing his cars for, a day or two. And so finally, Daniel comes in the next day and he's all excited to start learning karate. And Mr. Miyagi hands him a can of paint and says, "Okay, now paint the fence. Now, when you paint the fence, I want you to do it this way. You kind of paint up and you paint down, and you paint up and you paint down." And so he goes on and he paints the fence, and it takes him, I'm not sure how long it was in the storyline, but he's painting the fence. And so he thinks, okay, great. Tomorrow I'm going to show up, and now I'm actually going to learn how to do karate, right? And so he shows up, and Mr. Miyagi gives him some sandpaper, little sanding blocks, and says, "Okay, now it's time for you to sand the floor, right? This is how you sand the floor." And so he's going through doing all this stuff, and Daniel's starting to get frustrated, right? Because why did he come to Mr. Miyagi? Because he wanted the skills to be able to learn karate so he could defend himself, right? And so finally, Daniel kind of, blows up and says, "You know what? I'm kind of tired of being your servant. I don't want to do this anymore. I came here for you to teach me karate, and you told me that you would teach me karate. So show me how to do karate." And he was kind of fighting with Mr. Miyagi a little bit, until finally Mr. Miyagi said, "Okay, now show me wax on, wax off. Show me paint the fence," right? And so Daniel's there kind of doing these different moves and thinking, "Okay, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?" And at that point, Mr. Miyagi starts to attack him, right? He starts to punch, and he says, "Show me wax on, wax off." And as Mr. Miyagi is punching, the moves that Daniel has actually just been learning and has been practicing are exactly the moves that he needs to be able to protect himself and to control that particular situation so he doesn't get beat up and bullied. Now, why am I sharing all that with you? Well, first off, Karate Kid is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you need to go watch it. But also the fact that, just like Daniel in that movie, there are certain things that you can learn to do. When you learn to do them, when you practice them, you can actually control any conversation. Okay, now I know that sounds like a high bar, but there are some things that you can learn. And when you learn and practice them, you will be able to better control any conversation that you have, whether that's at work, whether that's at home. It doesn't matter, because a lot of these principles work in any conversation that you're having with another human being. Okay. And so let's get in and talk a little bit about it, right? Now, before I do that, I want to kind of rewind, because I told you at the beginning that I wanted to share a story with you. Okay. And here's the story. Okay. Uh, I remember very vividly, even though this happened to me 10 or 11 years ago now, of, getting out of a meeting and finding myself in a stairwell at work. So I was at work, I'd just gotten out of a meeting. I walked into the stairwell to go back down the 3 flights of stairs to my office after this meeting. And I just remember my heart started beating very fast as I got into the stairwell. And I just leaned up against the wall, and I could, all of a sudden, all of my senses just kind of came on. I could smell the concrete and the iron, handrail that's in there, and I could feel, the coldness of the concrete and everything else that was going on. And I just froze at that point, right? My senses were kind of going crazy, and I just locked up. I couldn't move. And I remember sitting there in panic, okay, wondering, how am I going to get back to my office, or how am I going to get out of this building? Because I just felt this need that I just had to flee. I had to get out of there. Now, why was I in that stairwell having a panic attack? Because I had just come out of a meeting that the conversation didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. I got beat up and bullied in that meeting pretty badly, okay? And I didn't have the skills at that time to be able to know what to do. And so when I left that meeting full of anxiety about what the future was going to be, I was able to make it, the 50 feet to the stairwell, and then I just froze up. And it sucked. Okay. Now, why am I telling you this? Because, again, as I told you, there are ways for you to be able to control any conversation. They're not something that you can just learn. Unfortunately, I can't give you all the skills right now. I can talk about a few, but when you learn and practice these things and actually go through a program, you can, just like Daniel did with learning karate, and at the end of Karate Kid, he was triumphant and ended up beating the bully in a karate competition. You can do the same thing with conversations. And here's why. Here's what I know, right? Is, as I told you, this happened to me about 10 or 11 years ago now. And at that point, when I finally composed myself and I got back down to my office, and I had to leave the building for a while, walk around outside to try to settle myself down at least. I vowed kind of to myself at that point that I wasn't going to let the same thing happen to me again. And so I went on a learning spree for 10 years, learning everything and anything that I could about human conversation, about psychology, about a thing called neuro-linguistic processing that you probably haven't heard of, about influence, all these different things to be able to learn so that I would never be in that same sort of situation again. Okay. I didn't want to be in that situation, and I don't want anyone else to ever be in that situation either. Now, I tell you this story, and again, I don't know if you've ever had a panic attack before, if you can fully relate to that kind of a thing where your body just kind of shuts down and you just can't do anything. Your mind is thinking and your body actually won't move. I don't know if you've had that experience or not, but whether you've had that experience or not, I'm sure that you've had those encounters with other people where all of a sudden, you felt like you wanted to just be small and kind of disappear from the situation, or you just froze up and you didn't know how to actually respond when somebody said some things that were maybe hurtful to you or that were really kind of out of left field that you hadn't actually anticipated. Now, I tell you this story too because I want to share something else with you. And that is, I was super embarrassed about this. Okay. I told you I did not tell anyone. Nobody knew about this for 10 years. In fact, it wasn't until sometime this last year, I was going through a training. I was doing some stuff on my own, thinking about some of the stories that I had, things that I had experienced, and remembered this particular experience again, right? So again, 10 years here I am trying to learn these things, but I hadn't shared that story with anyone because I was embarrassed. Here I was, an executive. I had all my shit together, at least that's what I was showing everybody, but inside I didn't. And so what I want to tell you too from this as a learning is, if you've ever experienced that, it's okay. Lots of people experience it. There's no reason to feel embarrassment or shame about it. You just didn't have the skills that you needed, right? So again, if we go back to our Karate Kid example, when Daniel got beat up, was it his fault? No, he just didn't know or have the skills to be able to handle that particular situation, right? There's nothing to be embarrassed about it. But again, I didn't tell my wife at the time. I didn't tell anybody that this had actually happened. And in fact, publicly, I've only maybe shared this 2 or 3 times. So, and again, the reason why I'm sharing this with you today is, if you've experienced something like that, and even if it hasn't been to that extent, right? But if you've been in conversations that just didn't go your way and you felt like you were beat up and bullied, I understand. I have been there as well, right? And that's why I'm just talking to you today, right? I know, and sometimes in the public forums, when I ask questions or I do things, I think a lot of times people are hesitant to respond because so much of the time we like to believe that we have everything together and that we know how to do this, and we try to show that to everybody else, because one of the greatest fears that we have as humans is having somebody else realize, right, that we don't know maybe as much as we do. We're afraid of the rejection that might come if we share some of these things with other people. I know that. I've experienced it. That's one of the reasons why I do what I do today with things like the Briefing Leadership Program and the Chief Audit Executive Forum, because I know that there needs to be a safe place for people to be able to express what's on their mind and to actually get the help, right? And so those things are available, and it's there because I know I needed it, right? And in fact, as I told you before, I didn't want to feel that way. And I don't want anybody else to feel that way either. Okay. So, as we're going through here, like I said, I'm just talking to you right now. So I don't have a bunch of scripted notes or anything else. So bear with me as I try to kind of collect my thoughts on that. But, as I told you at the beginning, as I talk to more and more people, there are a lot of people out there. You may be one of them, you may not be, but there are a lot of people out there that conversations just get out of control with some people, right? And they would like to actually be able to control those conversations more. They have trouble actually getting people to take action, right? You talk to people, it could be somebody on your staff, it could be a peer, but you just can't get them to to maybe value you or understand, when you have a suggestion, why they should follow that or why they should actually take action. Um, there's a lot of people that get in their head a lot, and they're not able to they try to overthink and overthink and overthink and overthink and end up not making a decision, or find out later that they really regret the decision that they made, because maybe in their heart, they were feeling like they needed to do something, but when they analyzed it and they thought about it and they sat on it for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe they didn't take action at all, or they made a decision that was different than what they were feeling in their heart. And I understand. I know that people are dealing with this. Like I said, it may be you, it may not be you. Um, but I'm here to kind of talk about that because, as I said, there's no shame in having some of those feelings or actually experiencing some of those things. Now, the issue is you can actually learn, you can develop the skills, you can practice, you can work on it, just like Daniel did, just like I have for the last 10 years. You can learn these skills, you can practice them, you can actually, become a ninja in being able to do some of these things. But really, the choice is up to you. And it's unfortunate, but when I talk to a lot of people, they don't want to admit that maybe they need some help. And what that ends up doing is it holds people back in their progression, right? And so sometimes, like at the beginning, or sometimes they'll say things like, do you have the courage to do something? A lot of people don't have the courage to do it, right? In fact, it takes more courage to actually ask for help and get what you need. But that's how you're going to change the situation on where you are actually at, right? And so again, let me kind of jump in a little bit here and kind of give you some takeaways, some things that I shared recently with people, that I want to share with you here as well. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of a lot of the things that you can end up learning. Okay. Um, but like I said, in this short format, I'm going to give you what I can, because really and part of the reason why Mr. Miyagi was doing what he did with Daniel is a lot of this takes some practice. And so again, even I'm going to give you some tips here, but if you just hear it, it goes in one ear, it goes out the other ear, you don't do anything about it, then I didn't help you. And honestly, well, I helped you, but you didn't help yourself because you didn't do the work, right? And so it's just like, if you remember when you rode a bike, when you learned how to ride a bike, there's a lot of different things that you have to do to be able to learn. You got to balance, you got to pedal, you got to do all these different things to be able to stay up and learn how to ride a bike. But once you learn how to do it and you practice how to do it, even if it's been several years since you've ridden a bike, that's why there's that term. It's just like riding a bike. Once you learn how to do it, when you get in a situation like that again, you know exactly what to say or do. And the same is true with some of these things that I'm talking about now. Okay. And really a lot of it comes back to three different areas or three different things that I talk about here. And we're not going to get into them all today, but it's neural influence, intuitive leadership, and mental mastery. It's being able to understand, recognize emotions in other people, recognize them in yourself, learn how to use those emotions or change some of the emotional states of people, to be able to, get people to take action. It's about, understanding some of the psychology behind how people think, what they do, what their belief systems are, and how doing things like asking questions, knowing how to use your body, how to use your language and the words that you actually use, makes it easier for you to help get people to take action. And then kind of from a mental mastery standpoint as well, just like riding that bike, that you practice it, you do it enough so that when these things come up, you know exactly what to say and what to do. Okay. And I usually liken this to kind of doing push-ups. I actually do push-ups every day as an exercise. I'm not a huge He-Man, but I do my push-ups every day, both figuratively and literally, because as we do some of these things every day, as we practice them, It's just like we've been doing push-ups, okay? And I'll tell you, at some point, whether you have already or you will in the future, you're going to have a difficult conversation. You're going to get kicked to the ground effectively, and there's going to be an elephant sitting on your back. Now, it's much easier to get up when that elephant is on your back if you've been doing your push-ups. But what a lot of people do is they wait until the elephant is on their back, and then they say, oh shit, I should have done my push-ups, right? Well, at that point, it's kind of too little too late, unfortunately, because we have to prepare before the event actually happens. Hey, folks, this is classic risk management, tying some of that back into it for you as well, right? So okay, so let's talk a little bit. Let me give you a couple of ideas here for ways, again, for you to be able to help control situations or conversations that you're in. Now, the first one is think about the right communication medium that you are using for the particular conversation. Now, a conversation medium is the medium of exchange that communication is going over. So think about, telephone, email, chat, video, in person. Those are different communication mediums. And what ends up happening a lot of times is when conversations don't go the way you were expecting, it's because you're not using the right communication medium. So as an example, my father is, well, he's old. Okay. He's close to 90, and he doesn't really like technology. In fact, he has a cell phone, but it's one of those old flip phones, right? That you really can't buy anymore. He doesn't have texting on it. So if I want to talk to my father, I have to call him on the telephone, which means I can hear his voice, he can hear my voice, but I have no idea how he's responding to me, okay? And so if I need to have a difficult conversation with my father and actually try to understand or deliver a message that might be difficult for him to receive, excuse me, doing that on the telephone is not the most effective way for me to do that, because I can't see his body language. He can't see my body language either. And so it makes that communication much more difficult. And so one of the ways, again, to control the conversations is control the medium that is being used. Okay. So again, usually the more important the communication, the more in person or at least visual that it needs to be. So in today's remote environment, you may not be able to talk with someone face to face. So what you do is the next best thing, which is video. And in fact, you control the conversation. So as an example, I use Zoom a lot for talking to people now. Now, there are certain conversations I require the camera to be on. And I know a lot of people like to hide behind and not turn on their camera. Oh, I didn't put on my makeup today, or I'm wearing my pajamas. I don't care. The conversation that we're having, I need to see your face and you need to see my face. So turn on the camera or we're not going to have the conversation. Okay, control the conversation by controlling the medium. That's one of the things to do. Now, I'm also going to share with you, because I know I'm looking at the time here and I don't want this to get too long, but let me share with you one other way of helping to manage communications. Oh, and one more thing on the communication mediums is this: use the best communication medium, not the easiest communication medium. And I say that because a lot of times we don't want to have a conversation. And so maybe we just send somebody an email because we don't want to have to hear what they're going to say, or we don't want to have to respond to it. That's the chicken shit way of doing it. My friends, use the right medium. Don't use the easy medium. Use the one that is right for the message that has to be delivered. Okay. Now, the last one that I want to talk about today, because again, I want to be conscious of your time, is the words you use matter. And so I'm going to give you a quick little tip on just how to change the sentence structure, especially when you are giving feedback to people. In the English language, and what I call this is reversing your butts. Okay, reversing your butts. Most of the time, when you're giving people feedback, most people will say something like this: Jason, you did a really good job on that last audit, comma, but I need you to do XYZ differently next time. Okay, that's how most people tend to use their sentence structure. To be more effective in your communication and to be able to control that conversation is reverse the order of the sentence. So that's why I call it reversing your butts. What you would normally say at the end, which is usually the corrective action, you put at the front instead. So you would say something like this: Jason, next time you do an audit, I need you to do XYZ, comma, but I was really happy with the work that you did on this particular project. It's delivering the same message, but the order and using the word but is something that makes it so that you're delivering the message better. People still get the message, but they don't completely discount the praise that you're trying to give them at the beginning. Plus, having the praise at the end is usually better subconsciously for people, because the first thing you do when you praise somebody is they go, in the back of their mind, they go, oh shit, something's about to come. Okay. Because usually if somebody, especially if your boss just comes up to you and goes, you did a really great job, 2 months ago on this thing. When they say that, you're going, okay, whoa, I know something else is coming though, because why would they randomly give me some sort of compliment? Something negative is coming next. And so again, flipping that around helps you to be able to do that. Now, again, as I told you today, I don't have enough time to get into all of these things, but I have hundreds of these type of things that you can use to help control any conversation, including, again, the way that you're using your language, the way you use your voice as you're talking, and you can go up or you can go down, and there's some different things that you can do with that. The way you use your body language, all of these different things. Because as I told you to begin with, right, when I had that really bad conversation, I was learning everything and anything that I could. And now, after 10 years of studying and learning and applying all of these things, now I'm sharing that with everybody else in the Briefing Leadership Program. Okay. It's actually a program where you can go through, learn exactly how to do these things, right? The different skills that you need, but more important than that, you actually have opportunities to exercise and practice those things until they become second nature to you, just like riding a bike. And when you learn these things, it's just like Daniel, show me, wax on, wax off. The next time somebody tries to hijack the conversation and it's not going where you want it to go, you'll know exactly what to say and what to do. Okay. And so the reason I'm telling you about this now is this is the first time that I'm offering this publicly, and it's open for registration right now. The problem is, it's not a problem if you actually take action, but it's closing on the 22nd of December. Okay, I'm only holding it open for the people that are ready and want to get in right now. But there's a whole bunch of information. There is a link in the show notes down below on where you can go to learn about this and to be able to join and get into this. Because not only do you receive, weekly videos about exactly how to do this and monthly calls with me on talking through and answering questions on how to actually apply this to people's particular situations so that you learn, how to do this. and all the other access in the program that is there, but there's a community of people that are going through the same things that you are. Remember, I told you before, there's no shame or embarrassment in this, because lots of people are going through the same thing. One of the huge benefits of this is you get to actually have a community with people that are working on and going through, and they get you. They understand you because they are going through or have gone through the same exact things that you have been going through. Okay. Another thing with this, I told you, I've got hundreds of these other little things to be able to teach you and share with you. And one of the things that's in there that you're going to find really helpful when you register is there's a whole cheat sheet on exactly what to say, kind of words and phrases and questions. In fact, I didn't have time to get into that today, but the better questions you ask, you actually can help remove resistance, move people to take action, and get the conversation to go exactly where you want to as well. You just have to understand how to use the questions and what questions are best to ask. And that's all included in this program as well. And so again, as I told you, there's information in the show notes down below. The reason that I'm sharing this with you again today, I know that there are lots of people out there that are struggling with these things, that want to learn how to do these things. They don't want to be in situations like that anymore. And if you are one of those people, then I want to help you. And that's why I'm talking to you right now. If you're not, if you're like, I'm cool, everything's fine, go about your life, and the next time you get knocked down and the elephant ends up sitting on you, then realize that I'm here to help next time as well. But as I told you, the Briefing Leadership Program is only open for a short time. And the reason for that is so that I can focus my attention on serving people in the program. And so there will only be opportunities to get into this program once or twice a year. And so if you're serious, if you're ready, if you want the help, I'm here to help. And I would love to have you in the program. So with that, my friends, as a wrap up today, remember, wax on, wax off. You don't have to get beat up and bullied by people either in your family or at work. There are ways for you to actually learn exactly how to control any conversation, get people to take action, and be able to make quicker and better decisions. And I look forward to being able to help you do exactly that. Now, as your takeaway for this week, again, if you missed them, I gave you a couple of tangible things that you can start working on this week to show you that this actually does work. So if you missed it the first time, rewind. Heck, you might even want to actually listen to the whole episode again. And with that, I'm going to sign off for this week, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Jammin' with Jason. Have a great week, my friend. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Jamming with Jason. Keep on rocking in the audit world. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you later on the next show. If you'd like to earn continuing professional education for listening to today's episode, head on over to C-Risk Academy at ondemand.criskacademy.com. And that's C as in the letter C, riskacademy.com. Not only do you get a CPE certificate, but you also will have access to the video version of today's show. The views and opinions expressed on this show are that of the individuals and not of their respective organizations.